Thank you for listening to We Have Ways of Making You Talk. Sign up to our Patreon to receive bonus content, live streams, and our weekly newsletter with money off books and museum visits as well, plus early access to all live show tickets. That's patreon.com/wehaveways.
Battle has gone very well, and almost exactly as planned, which is very gratifying. All formations have done well, particularly the French. Tomorrow, 8th Army attack the Hitler Line. The French go for the enemy's flanks. 2 US Corps drive northwest on the outer flanks of the French, and the attack from the bridgehead will be launched. That will be the climax I've planned for all through. And at last, after many ups and downs, it is all agreed, planned and ready. Pray all goes well. I believe the plan is the best, that everyone has confidence in it. Success depends on the speed and determination with which it is pressed on all 3 areas of attack. Now, you might think that that quote comes from General Sir Harold Alexander.
Yeah, I was going to say, is that your Alex impression? But it's not.
No,
it's
my John Harding. It's my General John Harding impression.
Really?
What? His plan? What?
His plan?
Surely?
Well, failure's an orphan. Success has many fathers, Jim. He's one of the people at this particular orgy when it comes to fathering this success, right?
Yes. I mean, he's wrong in saying that it hasn't gone exactly as planned. Yeah. It's gone planned in so much that it's a rip-roaring success. Where it hasn't gone planned in any shape or form is the shape of the front line, which is, instead of skewing with 8th Army going forward down the Liris Valley and the French and the 2 Corps behind, it's the other way around.
It is
2 Corps steaming down the Turanian coast, the French inland, and then 8th Army still languishing in the Liris Valley.
Slow, ponderous, all that 8th Army stuff. Well, let's say hello. Let's say hello to the listener. Attenzione. Welcome to We Have Ways of Making You Talk, the World War II podcast for all your World War II podcast needs, with me, Al Murray and James Holland, in the episode optimistically entitled "Rome Falls." Now, if you've been listening to this series of episodes about the campaign, really, to bring about the end of the German army in the south of Italy, to bring about the capture of Rome before D-Day. They're on a timetable before Overlord begins. Then you've come to the right place, because this is our final episode, and we promise copper bottom guarantee that, having fought through Cassino, I have to say I listened with faintly slack jaw to the idea that Mark Clark can only suggest things to Freiburg. I mean, the idea. Well,
you can literally in his diary entries, you can almost see the steam coming out of his ears.
Yeah. I understand why it's set up like that, but it's also like, Jesus Christ, this is annoying. They're so near to getting it right, but they can't actually. Anyway, so welcome. So this is the final episode in this series. Those of you who've gone ad free and subscribed, thank you for doing that and joining us for this climactic season finale. Should we call it that?
Yeah, the 9th hour of your time commitment.
Whole working day.
Although it's 8 episodes, I think a few have gone over, haven't they?
Yeah.
So we're on a par with Masters of the Air.
Exactly. It's a whole working day and a dribble of overtime. So thank you for joining us. We don't get overtime for this, by the way. I just want to point that out. Anyway, Cassino is, well, 8th Army are going not at the rate expected. Cassino's still going on, but
Monte Cassino still going on.
But the Germans are feeling it, right?
Big time. It's been a massive cock-up for the Germans, because all the senior commanders have been away on indoctrination courses and getting Knight's Crosses and being interviewed by the Führer and all this kind of stuff, and they're just not there, and that's left inexperienced commanders on the ground and Kesselring to kind of micromanage. And what he's done is what he always does, which is kind of fill things with penny packets. He's constantly kind of splintering up divisions and sending little units here, there, and everywhere, and it's
which are all depleted anyway. So it's not like it's not like he says, "Well, we'll send that battalion there." Well, he's effectively sending a company, isn't he? at best.
Yeah,
and
exactly that.
And so he's papering over the cracks, but without the adequate paper. So he's using bog roll where what he needs is, proper wallpaper, if you see what I mean.
And there's a huge argument for just pulling them straight back right in the first, the moment they get attacked, pulling the whole lot back, because then you've got two armies side by side behind the Caesar line rather than armies and units spread to the four winds, which is what you've got at the moment. I mean, it's always easy to take out units in penny packets, and it is a consolidated whole. But this is because Hitler's refusing to allow anyone to retreat until the last minute, which is obviously incredibly counterproductive. So von Stenger, who is the 14th Panzer Corps commander, which is taking the brunt of the 8th Army's attack in the Liry Valley, he finally gets back from getting his Knight's Cross and having his indoctrination on the 17th of May.
Sort of spring top-up, Nazism spring top-up, motivational check-in with the leadership, isn't it? We'll pat you on the head. Hitler knows that a lot of these generals are quite vain, so what you do is you give them a medal, you shake them by the hand, you maybe give them some land, top them up,
slip them
basically.
Brown envelope of cash.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then send them off to bad somewhere or bad...
Yeah. That's right.
Wherever, some spa and have a little bit of National Socialism indoctrination.
Ah, God. Anyway.
Then, and only then, you must return to the front.
Yeah, and meanwhile, the front's being because the thing is, for all of Eighth Army's slow progress, and they are still crumbling away at the enemy and smashing them up and making gains and making things extremely difficult for them. And the fact that there are two armies, three in effect, as we said probably 7 or 8 hours ago on this podcast, the fact that there are essentially three armies coming at the Germans in this offensive means that, well, if they slow down one, they've got two more to deal with, right?
Exactly. The orders, although Stenger is going, now is the time to pull back completely, he's routinely ignored, of course. And in the meantime, two more divisions are rushed to Italy, including, there's one little kind of fighter battle group of the 16th SS Panzer Grenadier Division have been sent over earlier, and they've been involved in the Anzio battle, but now the entire division is sent over, and the Brandenburg Division. So that's all great before Overlord. That's exactly what we want, because we're still going to beat you, and you're going to use up even more of your divisions. So, WNTL. Yeah. And Van Zongen also takes a very...
Overlord's less than a month away now as well. That's the other thing, isn't it?
Yeah, less than a month. It's literally around the corner. So it's all building to a massive crescendo. And von Stenger is also very upset that the 15th Panzer Grenadier Division, which has been in reserve, has not been sent to plug that widening gap that we mentioned in the last episode between 71 Infantry Division and the 94th Infantry Division over on the Tyrrhenian coast, which is where US 2 Corps are, and the French. And do you know what von Stenger says? He goes, "This is a classic example of the way conduct of operations degenerated under Hitler's influence." See, he knew it all.
He knew it all, but when did he write that?
Well, he did. He was writing that as a diary, to be fair.
Yeah, so that's in the diary. So we don't have to take that with a pinch of post-war salt of him being one of those generals saying
no. But all these guys, I mean, like him, he's not in the Stauffenberg plot, is he? He's not saying no. I'm not going to be a general anymore. I'm just going to retire because this is a load of rubbish. He's still fighting.
He's still fighting. But you know what I mean? He's not one of those guys who after the war said, if only we'd been allowed to do our thing, we'd have won. And if he's writing that at the time, that isn't post-war arse covering that a lot of the generals find themselves doing, right? That's in the moment. That's how he feels.
He's in the moment. Yeah,
right.
He is definitely in the moment. Well, pretty much. It's probably doctored afterwards, but it's about as in the moment as you're going to get from a senior German general. Yeah. So what's happened is the Gustav line in the Liry Valley has been breached. They've got through the Gustav line there. They're pushing forward. There is this Stenger line, which has been renamed from the Hitler line, coming out at an angle going across to Pontecorvo. So going at an angle, a sort of 45-degree angle across the Liry Valley. The Germans, because they're still holding on to Monte Cassino, totally pointlessly, I have to say. The 10th Army, which is pulling back from the Gustav line, is having to fight in front of the Stenger line, not behind the Stenger line, because otherwise you're disjointing the line. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. Got it. Yeah. Because it's like if you think of them as tributaries of a river, the Adolf Hitler line or the Stenger line and the Gustav line, is that where they split is north of Cassino and runs effectively behind Cassino, where the two lines split, right? So
it's not north; it's west. It's west of Cassino because of Cassino.
Yeah, I'm looking at them. I'm looking at the map on its side. We'll post this map. Yes. It's the Italian map. Yeah. But it's basically further up from Cassino is where the divide is. And, if it's two rivers separating, or if you think of it as a pair of fingers coming off a hand, Cassino is between the two fingers. After the split in the line. So what you're doing is you're compromising both lines by holding Cassino.
The Fallschirmjäger are still on the top of Monte Cassino. Yeah. And the Poles then decide to renew their attack, or they're ordered to renew their attack on the night of the 16th, 17th of May. And in the intervening days since that first fatal attack on the morning of the 12th of May, they've done some very, very aggressive patrol work.
They've done the patrolling that they needed to do that they hadn't done previously. Yeah. And they as a result, they've figured out how the Germans have organised their defence.
They've figured out the figure of 8.
And so they know they need
Finally.
They know they need to swamp it, basically. Give the Fallschirmjäger too many problems to deal with that they can't deal with.
Exactly.
All of them, is what it comes down to, doesn't it? Which shows that even these elite crack troops, Jim, have their limits.
They do.
So they send in 2 divisions at once. By dusk, 0.593 over, which so much blood has been spilt. But at company level is the interesting thing, because this bigger attack obviously offers the opportunity for more casualties on your own side, but in long run it's the best way to go about it. They take 0.593 and they hold it, and then the Germans are ordered. I mean, it's always this thing. The Germans are ordered to pull back to the Sengel line. They're always pulling back too late. It was making these decisions too late. The last of the Fallschirmjäger leave Monte Cassino on the night of the 17th and 18th. So the Poles applying themselves properly to the problem has worked.
Yeah, I mean, the Germans always say, well, we were going to pull out anyway. But, I'm not prepared to take the glory away from the Poles. No. Absolutely hats off, top job. They it's absolutely amazing. And at 20 past 10 on the morning of the 18th of May, the 12th Lancers pennant is raised over the ruins of the Abbey. Yeah. And the Battle of Monte Cassino is at long last finally over. Polish casualties, 3,779 out of 43,000 men or whatever. I mean, it's quite a big hit.
Yeah.
The carnage now in the valley and around about the end of this battle is absolutely horrific.
Yeah.
So Cassino, of course, is 100% destroyed. Pignataro, which is a little village just behind the lines on the Liri Valley, 93%. Belmonte, which is where Jorg Zellner was, 95%. Esperia, 92%. San Giorgio, Sant'Angelo and Fiordici, 90% destroyed. I mean, just gone.
San Giorgio, 89% destroyed. I mean, you could cheer up, chaps. 11% of the village is still standing. I mean,
the blacksmith shed is still going.
It's not good, is it? Or you're what if you are the person whose house wasn't knocked down? Does that? I mean, obviously everyone's fled, haven't they? But is there any avoiding it though, Jim? Really?
No. I mean, look at Gaza. Look at Aleppo. Look at Mariupol. That's what happens when you've got a major or Bakhmut or somewhere. When you've got a place where is just repeated fighting. That's what happens in a modern war where you've got huge amounts of ordnance. It's just
and where the consideration is to protect your own people by making sure the other side are destroyed. Isn't it? That's and if you've got Fallschirmjäger. Elite, steely Fallschirmjäger prepared to pay the ultimate price for the Führer, and that's
17-year-old elites.
But that's the key point: is that they're prepared. They're gonna win or die trying, and they're not going to win. So, you have to winkle these people out one way or another, and that involves destroying wherever they've decided to defend. Because what they're not doing is digging into the meadow for consideration of the abbey or the village or the town, are they? They're not. Battlefields. Field is the wrong word when it comes to these battlefields.
The destruction of Cassino Town, kind of in a way, even more so than the Abbey, funnily enough, kind of just feels so. I know it was already kind of in a pretty bad shape, but utterly pulverize it and then not take advantage of that. And it's the same with the destruction of the Abbey. Actually, no, I take it back. I think the Abbey is just as bad, if not worse. Yeah. The idea of destroying it, but to no point. That's the problem.
Yeah.
You know, if you're going to take such a drastic step, that's fine. If it's not fine, but it's understandable and acceptable if you follow through and you achieve your aims of undertaking that destruction in the first place. But that isn't happening, and that's the tragedy of Cassino and the Abbey. Anyway, very interesting development now emerges on the night of the 18th, 19th of May, because the French have cut in behind the Monte della Mandrone. And this is really weird because on the side, so what you've got running up the southeastern, well, the other side of the Liri Valley, southwestern side of the Liri Valley. You've got the Arunzi Mountains, and they're running, and it's a
left-hand side.
Left-hand side is you're looking towards Rome. Yeah. 12 miles down the track, you've got this little indent, and in the middle of it is this tiny little rounded knoll, much smaller, a little hill. It's like a simple hill on its own. And either side of this, at the bottom of it, you've got Pico to the north and Pontecorvo to the south. And between this, with this one little hole, this one little tiny little hill, is a gap through which, now that the French have got Monte della Mandrone, you could pour in the French and cut in behind AOK 10. Because all of the 10th Army is still in front of, or just pulling in behind at this point, the Senga line.
Yeah.
So confusion, disarray, units all over the place. Problem is, and Clark sees this, he recognizes this, and he says, I believe if 8th Army will attack the Hitler line in the Pontecorvo region in the next 2 days, if we hit it north from Pico all out with all our forces and bridgehead next morning, we will fold up the German army in Italy. And that's what he says to Alex on the 19th of May. And Alex goes, marvellous old chap, crack on. And the weird thing is it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. The French come through, they send down kind of, one division, which as we all know means one brigade, which means, 2 battalions, which means 4 companies.
Yeah.
And they actually get some German reserves, and German artillery kind of hammers them and they can't quite get forward. And Juan doesn't pursue this with the degree of all-outness Clark has suggested. And if there is one opportunity in this battle to completely fold up the vast majority of AOK 10, the German 10th Army, it is this moment. So
are you saying, Jim, I just want to get this out in the open, that this is all the fault of the French? In which case the 8th Army people who hate Mark Clark and the Mark Clark people who hate 8th Army, they can all down tools.
No, I think Clark's slightly responsible too.
I think
he just slightly takes his finger off the pulse off it just at the crucial moment.
For those of a Nelsonian tendency, this is a fantastic moment where it's the French causing the.
It's the French what done it.
The French done it. Not the Great American Eagle. It's the French letting us all down yet again in the Second World War. Marvelous stuff.
Well, I think it's one of those things where I think it's kind of, you can see this opportunity. It probably doesn't develop in quite as kind of sort of, if the French had been all out for it and really, really had gone, okay, right, we're just going to absolutely swamp our troops in here in a kind of sort of German style of swamping, then maybe it could have done it. But actually it is quite difficult to maneuver quickly, whole divisions through mountains out into kind of open space.
Attacking's hard. And
so the truth of the matter is it probably isn't anyone's fault, really. It probably could have been pursued a bit more with a bit more cut and thrust and a bit more determined. But don't forget, these guys, it's now the 19th of May. They've been at it since the 11th.
That would be my thing is if you've been at this a week, you've got the enemy on the hop, but you're being eaten away by it as well. And the thing you could ask of the French a week ago, they may not be able to pull off a week later. Is what it, or any of the units or formations we're talking about in this campaign. And this is the nature of modern warfare, where at this tempo, isn't it? Is that the thing the dash you had on day one, and also that thing that it has to happen. These opportunities, you have to grab them immediately, and if you can't quite, then you're stuck. Which is the story of Cassino, as we saw at Monte Cassino, is that if you don't do it on day one, you're caught in the glue of the situation, aren't you? I mean, what I also want to say, dear listeners, James Holland there had an opportunity to land this one firmly at the door of the French and shied away from it at the last minute, like
Ike Parkinson.
Like a nervous horse at the Grand National confronted with a fence he can't quite manage.
Yes, I was at Beecham's or whatever it was. Yeah.
Anyway, but
let's not worry about it because too much.
Not worry about it. Well, because there's plenty that can still happen to the Germans in this regard. And then
there certainly is.
23rd of May at 6 o'clock in the morning, 8th Army's guns open up.
Yes, because if you remember in the last episode, we mentioned that once they've got through the Gustav line, and Lees and co. were talking about kind of, I'm afraid we're going to have to sort of redeploy all our artillery.
Yes.
Suddenly, that's a set piece attack. It's not a battle in flow. It's a kind of pause, take a deep breath, get everything forward, move all the artillery up, then start again. So this is it's 6 a.m. on the 23rd of May is the start again, and they're still only at the Sanger line. So in what's that, 12 days, nearly 2 weeks, they've advanced a matter of miles. They've got over Monte Cassino, they've got through Cassino town, they've got across the Rapido, they've bridged it all, they brought up the Canadians, 78 Division is in place, it's all looking good. And Oliver Lees, for one, is happy, and he's the commander of the 8th Army.
And the thing is, Jim, if the Allied way of war is using your guns, then reorganise your guns.
I'm not criticising it at all. I think it's absolutely fine.
This is the point. I think it's fine. He says, a great day. It was a very hard fight all the morning, but after lunch, we broke in deeper with tanks and infantry. The Germans are in complete chaos. Units mixed up everywhere and nearly all serving under command of any division except their own. Whereas we are all tidy and present in the army, eager to get on.
I mean, that just tells you everything you need to know about Lees, doesn't it?
Yeah. His wife must have loved getting those letters.
Oh, another one from Ollie.
Exactly. I'm fine.
Military stuff. Yeah, whatever. Yada, yada, yada. Such a bore when he goes on about his armoured units.
Oliver's batteries is doing very well, it would seem. Yes,
he's doing. Ollie's doing frightfully well. But what I love about it is say what we're going to do, chaps. We're going to have the opening barrage, then we'll pause for breakfast, then we'll fight a little bit, then we'll have a luncheon break. Then after lunch, I mean, it's not a freaking test match. I mean, it's just. This is a battle, and then the fact that whereas we're all tidy, that's what matters.
Yeah, well,
really
but
funny. I love it.
Tidy matters an awful lot. To
of course it does. I'm not
it?
mocking. I'm mocking him, but I'm not mocking him. Anyway, the bottom line is they bludgeon their way through, which is great. And I think we've now got to the crux of the entire battle, which is the breakout from Anzio.
Right.
So I think that's the time we should pause and go into the final furlong. We're now at the 23rd of May, people.
Well, and we had not mentioned Anzio in the whole of the rest of this episode. So the ace in the Allied sleeve is the possibility of a breakout at Anzio, and the too big to fail landing is now going to deliver, or is it? Join us after the break to find out. Welcome back to We Have Ways of Making You Talk, where we tantalisingly offered you the prospect of a breakout from the Anzio beachhead. And this begins with just before the break, 8th Army were battering the Sanger line, bludgeoning the Sanger line with every gun they have. But the Germans have got another problem, which is that the breakout from Anzio begins the same day. I mean, if you're...
Yeah, but this is about 45 miles away from 8th Army. I mean, this is like a decent stretch. So 14th Army, yes. And so basically, what happens is there's this huge offensive in at Anzio. The Germans kind of initially resist and then they start making little dents in the old bridgehead line, pushing the Germans back, and then on the 25th of overnight on the 24th, 25th of May, the Germans pull back behind the Caesar line. It's like it's all over. Let's get behind the Caesar line now. The Caesar line, for those who just to remind everyone, runs south of Rome across the Alban Hills. Now, this is not like the Gustav line. It's not like the Bernard line. It does have some bunkers. It does have fixed positions. It's mines. It's wire. It's that kind of stuff. But it is nothing like as developed a defensive position as the Gustav line. It is on high ground overlooking the valley. So what you've got is the Runzi Mountains on the left-hand side as you're going northwards of southwest side of the Liri Valley, which then flow into the Lepini Mountains. You've then got, on the Tyrrhenian coast, it then emerges into the Anzio floodplain, which is flat as a board. It continues pretty flat right on the Tyrrhenian coast up to Rome. And, for those who've been to, Ciampino will know that, the Leonardo da Vinci International Airport, southwest of Rome, that's where that leads to. But in between that and the Via Casalina, which is running along the other chain of mountains, which extends up from the Monte Cassino Massif all the way up with the Via Casalina at its foot on the right-hand side on the northeastern side of the Liri Valley. There are also mountains, and then there's these hills, and the largest one is Monte Antemizio, and this is the Colli Lazzali and the Alban Hills and all the rest of it. And then what you've got is the Via Casalina then rises up and climbs to a sort of pass on the right-hand side of the Alban Hills and kind of sort of hilly kind of country. It's no longer mountains, but it's sort of hilly country before you sort of sweep round the Alban Hills and get into Rome, which lies in the kind of sort of coastal plain, apart from the Seven Hills, of course. So that's the situation. So the Caesar line promises quite a lot. And what you have got extending from the Anzio bridgehead all the way to the Via Casalina, and particularly to the town called Valmontone, a kind of a valley, a plain, which gets a little bit undulating, but is basically lowish ground, all the way to Valmontone. So if you're striking out from the Anzio bridgehead towards Valmontone, you have got the Alban Hills on your left-hand flank the whole way. And that's the problem. So
you can be shelled and observed, shelled. You
are cutting under the noses of 14th Army in the hills with all their observers and artillery pieces. And I would say that's quite problematic.
It's quite tricky.
It's quite tricky. But be that as may, the orders of Diadem are for, when they break out, to go all out to Valmontone and block off the retreat of the 10th Army as they come down, streaming down the Via Casalina from the pressure of 8th Army. That is the plan. Yeah. But as we've said multiple times, 2 Corps is now hooked up with 6 Corps. So 5th Army is now whole once more for the first time since 22nd January. Or 21st of January, or whatever. And when they all set sail. And the French are still on their flank. So you've got this sort of this sort of area of space in that valley below the Alban Hills, but between the Alban Hills and the Lepini Mountains, which is sort of wide open. And then you've got the whole much of the Via Casalina all the way down to the Senga line, or just north of the Senga line, where the Germans are pulling back, which is sort of, empty space effectively. Going to Valmontone is a really, really good idea as long as the Germans are falling back down the Via Casalina. But Clark goes up there and thinks, hang on a minute, this is insane. What are we doing going to Valmontone? Because 10th Army is not retreating down this way. We'd be much better to turn the whole of our weight of 5th Army against the Alban Hills and against 14th Army and confront them face on, because suddenly we've got an opportunity here to get into Rome through the Alban Hills rather than along the Via Casalina. And, he's a broad front kind of guy. I mean, that's the kind of language he understands. But Truscott, who's the 6th Corps commander, can't understand it because he knows what the orders are. The orders are to go to Valmontone and then cut up the Via Casalina that way and cut round the Alban Hills. And the reason Truscott is upset by this order to turn vast majority of his forces up through the Alban Hills, because he thinks, you're now asking me to go uphill to attack a fixed position, whereas I could go through the gap of Valmontone, of the Via Casalina. And he's got a point. I mean,
I'm with him. I would find that upsetting.
Well, yes, except that to get to Valmontone, you've then got you've got to go across 14th Army's flank. Your flanks are being overlooked.
His issue partly as well is that he's been brought in, hasn't he? And he's and everything's been going not well. Everything has, nothing's been going right at Anzio aside from establishing a proper bridgehead. So he doesn't want to be given a thing to do that then is really, really hard, and he's unable to establish himself as a man of decision at Anzio, right? You're given something to do and you think, that's beyond me, or that's going to go wrong, and I'm going to be another general who's screwed up here and they'll fire me. That's got to be part of his calculation.
That's exactly. No, that's 100% his calculations. So it's not disobeying the original Alexander signed off Diadem plan that's the issue for Truscott. It's that he thinks the best way to get to Rome is to go round the side of the Alban Hills and go down the Via Casalina. But the Via Casalina is an access, as 8th Army in the Liri Valley have showed, using a whole army down the access of one road is problematic. Can't be done. And it's not that they're not going to Valmontone. So it's also really interesting to note that von Veitinghoff is not ordering the retreat of 10th Army down the Via Casalina. They're skewing off to the northeast. So what happens is once you get to Valmontone, you've got a ridge of mountains running roughly parallel to the Via Casalina. So the only way, if you got to Valmontone, you could then catch the next road is by going up over the mountain and down the other side, which isn't going to happen because it's a mountain and there's no road. So the roads concertina out through the mountains, through these little valleys, which concertina to the kind of northeast, away from the Via Casalina. So the next one, is Genezzano, which is 8 miles as a crow flies, but many, many more than that by road from Valmontone. The next one is via Subiaco, which is 14 miles as a crow flies. And the fifth and final route is more than 40 miles away, concertinaing out from like a spoke from a wheel. And the interesting thing is not a single German soldier is retreating down the Via Casalina. The original reason to go to Valmontone and break out from the Anzio bridgehead and go to Valmontone is to block the German retreat. But there's no Germans retreating to block if you go to Valmontone. So on the 26th of May, the morning of 26th of May, Clark orders the forces to split into 2 lines of attack. The 45th Thunderbirds, the 36th Texans, and the 34th Red Bulls, along with the 2 British divisions and most of the 1st Armoured Division, are to attack straight up through the Alban Hills. But they're to attack on different axes all at the same time. So put the depleted 14th Army under immense pressure, even though they're going uphill. And then the 3rd Infantry Division, which is John McManus's favourite division, and the Special Service Force, which is this kind of sort of commando-like thing of joint American-Canadian force, is to drive on to Valmontone with a regiment with an armoured regiment as well. So they are still going to Valmontone. And the idea to go to Valmontone is to then turn left on the Via Casalina and push through round the edge of the Alban Hills. And the 3rd Infantry make very, very quick progress, do get across. And the reason they're able to get across safely, of course, is because the rest of the 5th Army is attacking the Alban Hills, which is keeping the 14th Army from attacking 3rd Infantry. Which the reason they've got that clear passage across the valley is because of the work the others are doing in the Alban Hills. I mean, that really has to be remembered.
But in a sense, I mean, that's a macrocosm of what happened at Monte Cassino itself. The Germans have too many things to deal with, which means that they're being swamped by armies essentially, and whatever they do, they'll be occupied by one Allied punch, which means they're unable to resist another. Exactly.
But what you've got now is you've now got sort of massive crumbling going on. They have 4 days of attacking up in the Alban Hills, and 8th Army has 4 days of attacking beyond the Senger line. And they're getting, the progress of 8th Army is 2 to 3 miles a day.
Yeah.
And this is partly because of German rear guards, but it's mainly because of congestion and damage and villages and towns which are kind of full of rubble and bridges that have been blown, and Ted White Smith having to do 26 bridges in 28 days and all this kind of stuff. I mean, it's just, you're trying to canalise too much down two small roads. And that's the problem. That's why it's slow. It's inevitable, and one shouldn't beat up 8th Army too much about this. It's just the way of things. But 6th Corps are also making no dent on the Caesar line, and that is more of a problem. And then, irony of ironies, it is the Texans who discover a massive gap in the Caesar line at Monte Artemisia, which is the highest peak in the Alban Hills. They report this immediately on the morning of the 28th of May, and they look at it and they think, I reckon the engineers could bulldoze a track for the armour straight up here. Amazing. And that is what they do. They just go straight up. Absolutely. 3 bulldozers side by side, just go straight up, clear it all out of the way. And on the night of the 30th of May, the Texans, that beleaguered division, begin their assault with an extra regiment of engineers and dozers, and they make the breakthrough. And the interesting thing is that Kesselring has been up the kind of, on the 28th as well, and has noticed this gap and tells von Mackensen, and von Mackensen orders it to be troops to close that gap, but they don't do it. They don't act quickly enough. So one time the Germans don't move fast. And so the Texans are then able to unfold the whole position because basically it's split 14th Army in two. They've just gone like this and the whole thing is just collapsed. And at that point, the whole thing crumbles.
The listener will remember that for Mackensen, his heart wasn't really in.
No, it's fair to say.
In things.
He's
so maybe
desperate to be back in Verona.
Exactly. So that's a mark. That's a mark, perhaps, of for Mackensen. For Mackensen's ultimate sort of down payment on not really being that interested in fighting where they're fighting.
He is to Kesselring what Freiburg is to Clark.
There we go. I mean, it's the thing is that not all the German generals can be, flinty-eyed, competent, die in a ditch people, can they? Some of them are.
Well, it's not that von Mackensen isn't competent. It's just his heart's not in it.
His heart's not in it. Yeah. And Kesselring sacks him, which I think is interesting. And
do you know what happens when he does that? Von Mackensen is so surprised that his monocle pops out of his eye. Bing! And he says, Gott in Himmel.
And does he say, why do I wear this thing anyway? I don't need it.
Oh, yeah, actually, do you know what? This is a good line in the sand. I'm gonna leave 14th Army and leave behind my monocle.
Bury my monocle at Wounded Knee. Yeah.
Wounded Artemisio. Yeah. Exactly.
So, and this then turns into two British divisions on the left flank, 3rd Division ready to shoot up via Castellina. The 1st of June, basically, starter's pistol goes to get to Rome.
Off they go.
Broad assault by 5th Army. Rome falls on the 4th of June. 5th of June, Mark Clark enters a corps conference at the Campidoglio on the Capitoline Hill. And Rome isn't. I mean, I said this several episodes ago. Rome is liberated, but basically in one piece. And I think this is the true miracle because moments ago we were talking about villages and towns being smashed up 95%, 93%, 89%. The consolation of the 89% destruction. If the Germans had decided to Stalingrad it in Rome, then what? They decided to fight for Rome street by street. Then what? What do the Allies do in that situation?
Well, they would never be able to do that because they don't have the cohesion at this point to do it. Had they fallen in line together, 10th Army and 14th Army behind the Caesar line, very different kettle of fish.
If they'd done things more, exactly. So Rome is saved partly by German incoherence in responding to what the Allies are doing.
Yeah. I mean, it is being declared a open city, but Roma città aperta, but the Roberto Rossellini film, etc.
Yeah.
But that's only slightly meaningful. I mean, the Germans could change their minds on that.
They have changed their minds several times. Since the invasion of Sicily. They're flip-flopping like mad about what they'll do about the Italians. So Or just, all right, then we'll dynamite the forum. The fact that none of that happens, that they don't do any of that, I think is the miracle of this campaign, actually. And when people go on about it's too slow and all this sort of stuff, or missed opportunities, the greatest opportunity of all that Rome isn't destroyed is the one that falls into the Allies' lap. So 10 out of 10.
It is the biggest Allied victory in the West of the war up to this moment. Yep. And it's a massive battle. I mean, the interesting thing is that the aim of Diadem is to destroy the German 10th Army.
Yeah.
And the outcome is that 10th Army is not destroyed, but it's badly mauled. But 14th Army is.
Well, I mean, this is
so the result is better than it's not how they expected, but it is better than they had expected.
Yeah.
And the German losses are between 50 and 60,000, which is a huge number when you're under strength anyway. The amazing thing is that by this stage, 5th Army is truly enormous.
Yeah.
It's 369,356 men strong on the 5th of June, 1944. And the opportunity to push on and absolutely drive the Germans completely out of Italy is absolutely there on a plate. Unfortunately, other political machinations, Operation Dragoon, as it becomes called, the southern invasion of France, gets in the way of that. And maybe later on we should, either later on this year or beginning of next year, we should do another series on Italy where we kind of do the rest of the campaign, because it is really, really interesting.
Yeah.
But for that's for another day. But this victory shouldn't be belittled. It's absolutely an enormous victory, and it is, pictures of Clark in his Jeep going through Rome and the Forum, and tanks going past the Colosseum and stuff are broadcast all around the free world. Hats off to Clark, I think, because he's made plenty of mistakes on the way. He's prickly and difficult and all the rest of it, but
who cares?
When you think of that Green Army commander of the 9th of September 1943 when he lands at Salerno, and you think how far he's come, and you think the challenges he's had, the multinational forces. No other American commander that has to command multinational forces in the way that Clark has to, or has the politics and machinations and Churchill breathing down his neck and the combined chiefs of staff and all the rest of it. None. And he's answered all of those. And the truth of the matter is, his frustrations at the Rapido, his frustrations on Monte Cassino and the bombing of the Abbey, his frustrations at the Battle of Cassino in March, all of them are entirely justified, and he's proved right on every single one. So I think everyone needs to sort of get off his back a little bit. He's not the nicest guy in the world, and he's definitely got some character flaws, but, show me a general that hasn't, apart from Alexander. And Slim or whatever, and even they have mistakes and make mistakes.
And what people, the thing is here is when you compare Clark and Alexander, Clark's too abrasive, too big-headed, whatever, and that is the criticism, right? And the criticism of Alex is that he's not forceful enough. So he's not. Alex isn't enough like Clark. Clark isn't enough like Alex. I mean, what do you people want?
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. I've never thought about it like that, but that is absolutely spot on. And here's another way of looking at it, which is together they make a fine team.
Well, there you are. You see,
inadvertently.
A bit of chalk and cheese, a bit of yin,
a bit of yang,
isn't necessarily a bad thing. And I often think when people go for these sort of fine, Clark's abrasive. Maybe he has to be. Maybe he needs to be. Maybe that's the way to make this work. Were he in a different situation, he wouldn't be. But he's in this situation, and that's how he's going to have to, the way to chivvy people on. Also, I mean, I think there's a certain degree of self-restraint too on his part. The way you're talking about Freiberg in the previous episode, and Clark saying, I can't tell him what to do. I can't order him what to do. I've got to suggest. That suggests a man actually being weighing up a situation and dealing with it as best he can, rather than being this big head who's going to tell people my way or the highway or whatever. I think these personality contrasts are inevitable, and you need them, don't you? You need, because this is a collegiate way of doing war.
Well, yes, and also for the student of history, you also need complicated, nuanced, and flawed characters. You don't want them to be perfect. He's not an Eichelberger. He's not a Slim compared to literally every other general in the theatre. I would say Clark is streets ahead of.
But Jim, he also
battlefield commander of all the others.
But he characterises the thing the Americans have done in themselves as an army, which is they've come into this. The British have had 2 years of being kicked about, or 3 years, even 3 years of being kicked about by the Germans. And the Americans have come in very, very green and have learned at such a stellar rate. If they can deliver a man like Clark, who's able to fight a battle like this and grab his opportunities, take his chances, and work in a collegiate style with people from all over the world. I mean, how the hell have they done that? How the hell has the American army, which was a think tank between the wars, think tank and a sort of gendarmerie, how on earth has it managed to do that? It's incredible.
I completely agree. It is amazing. And for all the kind of furore and hoo-ha about the fact that Clark, rather than the British, took, the Americans Clark's Fifth Army rather than British Eighth Army took Rome rather than the other way around. It's kind of right that it's his army that takes it, because they've been on this side of the country. They've been taking the brunt. It's been Fifth Army that has taken the brunt of the Cassino battles, not Eighth Army. Eighth Army's been on the Adriatic. It's his just desserts, frankly.
Yeah.
I don't see why any Eighth Army officers should be in the slightest bit bitter about Fifth Army taking it. And let's not forget that Fifth Army also contains 2 British divisions who are incredibly welcome in Rome. I mean, it's such a non-story that, the Alan Wicker view of Eighth Army and of Mark Clark is just absolute balderdash. Hats off to them, I say.
Well, I still think it's a miracle that Rome is, that they don't, blow up the Colosseum or whatever. The Germans on their way out.
Yes.
That's a miracle of this campaign. Anyway, thank you very much for.
Well, I remember. I'm just going to tell you one little anecdote before we go, because we've already done 12 hours, so we might as well do another minute. And that is this guy called Bucky Walters. He was in the Red Bulls and he was a sergeant, and he told me that he went in his Jeep, and the guy in his Jeep saw the Colosseum and he said, "Say, Sarge, I thought we hadn't bombed Rome."
Bravo.
He went, "No, son, that's the Colosseum. That's ancient Rome."
Oh, God. Oh, yeah. I love Americans. Anyway,
yeah, me too.
In case any are listening, thank you very much for listening to this 8. Is it 8 episodes we've done now? This 8 episode series about
8 and final episode,
the fall of Rome. Those of you who've stayed the course, congratulations. Maybe if you want more of this kind of thing, then you could come to We Have Ways Fest, the 19th to 21st of July. At Black Pit Brewery, which is next door to Silverstone Racetrack, just off the M40. Last year's festival was an absolute blast, Jim, wasn't it? It was an incredible
wasn't it
event.
fun? It was so much fun.
With thousands of people interested in the topic. It's a war waffle safe space. You can come and say hello to us. You could come and say hello to all the different speakers we've got. The glamping's sold out, I'm afraid, so you may have to make your own camping provision. But we look forward very much to seeing you there. Thank you very much for listening. There'll be more of these kind of series as we go across the terrain of 1944, which of course is the 80th anniversary. Thank you very much for listening. We'll see you all again very soon. Bye-bye.
Arrivederci.